Hi, due to request from some of you, today we're going to talk about Whitney Houston's horoscope. And I'll show you very quickly the major themes in her life. You'll see how astrology, how telling astrology can be even without knowing a lot of details about astrology, just by knowing the overall influence of the houses and planets together. And I have her chart here indicated with the I'm using tropical astrology, Western tropical astrology for this, and I have it indicated with the two types of charts that astrologers use: the square one, which starts ascendant from here, or the circular one, used more often in the West, where the ascendant starts from here and the houses are 1, 2, 3, counting in this order, or here 1, 2, 3, counting in that order. And let's start in the order of the houses to see where her planets are. Well, first of all, the most important thing in her life is her singing. Of course, it has to be indicated for a woman with such an amazing voice. It has to be indicated in her chart extremely clearly. And in the horoscope, the second house rules the voice. And the second house, if you can see here or here, doesn't matter where you're looking, these are the second house, has two very powerful planets in Whitney Houston's horoscope. The second house is the voice, and she has Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion, the planet of more. So it's whatever she's having here, she's having more of it. Her voice is like expansional. It's big, it's high. Jupiter, whatever Jupiter touches, wherever it is, you get a natural talent. You've worked on it in past lives, you perfected it, and it's something like a gift from God almost to you when you're born in this life. Whatever Jupiter is, it's something that we're really good at, especially if Jupiter is in good sign, like one of the fire signs, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Pisces. The water signs, Jupiter is very strong in the water signs as well. Not so much in the earth and air signs, but for Whitney Houston's, it's in Aries, so it's fire signs. So her voice is expansive, big, inspirational. Jupiter is the planet of inspiration as well, of faith and belief. And a lot of her singing came, Jupiter is the planet of religion and spirituality as well. So a lot of her inspiration for singing came from spirituality. She was a gospel singer. She was singing in church originally. And then she has the moon there. The moon is, of course, another planet which is the planet of emotions, of sensitivity. So her voice was deeply emotional. It could make you, it could, and penetrating almost, so two planets there really focused, and actually Jupiter is the ruler of her whole horoscope, and when the ruler of the whole horoscope, because her ascendant is Pisces here, and Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. So when the ruler of the whole horoscope, which is always the ruler of the ascendant, is in the second house, she's fully invested in the affairs of second house, which particularly for her second house means many things, but one of them is the voice. And this voice is expansive, it's big, she's invested there, it's gift from God, it's powerful. But the moon is decreasing. You know how the moon is waning and waxing? Some parts of the month the moon is growing, but her moon is actually, her moon is getting smaller. When she was born, the moon was waning, was getting smaller and smaller. So when you have the moon in the second house of voice, it means with Jupiter, initially you'll have a great, amazing voice, but with time it will be waning, just like the moon is waning. So she started losing her voice towards the end of her career, and you all know that. The last 10 years, it's been quite, and one of the indications are a waning moon. Whenever you have a moon in a house, if it's waning, you'll be getting less and less of that in your life. If it's growing, you'll be getting more and more in your life, and you can see this because you see how the moon is about to join the sun. The moon is, all the planets are moving in this direction. If the moon was, if this is the sun, for instance, her sun is here, indicated here. If the moon was just separating from the sun, it means it's moving away, so it's growing, but the moon is about to join it in a little bit, so it's waning moon. Not waxing, so the voice was decreasing as well. Then let's go in the next planet, in the fifth house. This is the planet Rahu, the north node of the moon. It's indicated like that in my horoscope. If you're using my birth chart calculator in astrolada.com, you'll see it like that, Rahu in the fifth house. So if you're using a Western one, you'll see that she has the south node in the fifth sign from the ascendant. And The North Node is the path of life that one should follow, one should develop in this life, because they haven't focused on that in past life. And this past life, it will bring them success, it will bring them a sense of fulfillment, it will bring them a leapfrog. Actually, very quickly it can bring you success. Wherever Rahu is, you can have like a leapfrog into recognition there. And fifth house is the house of creativity, and it's the house of all celebrities, it's the house of being center stage. So whenever you see someone with Rahu, the North Node in the fifth house, these people should be creative. If they haven't expressed their creativity in this life, when they pass away, they'll feel very unfulfilled, they'll feel pretty much unhappy. So such people should be very much center of attention, should develop and express their fifth house, which is creativity, which is expressing your talents for the public, which is being a star. Fifth house is the house of celebrity and stardom. So she actually had a great leapfrog into stardom. People with the North Node in the fifth can have this actually. They can become center stage and they can be really great at performing and being in the public eye. And then let's go to the next house. In the sixth house, she has Venus and Sun there. And the sixth house is the house of addictions. And Venus is the planet of alcohol, sugar, sweet things. So when you see people who have planets in sixth house, especially Venus, they're much more prone to addictions in their life. For instance, Betty Ford had it. I think as well, quite a few people that have had lifelong problems with cigarette or alcohol addictions will have a few planets in the sixth house, or usually Venus in particular for alcohol and food, drugs as well, because sixth house is the house of lack of balance, is the house of anything which harms the health. And whatever planet is in the sixth house, it can harm the health, and it becomes something which is a source of disbalance in the life of this person. And Venus in particular is alcohol, and the Sun there, there can be other drugs involved, but the person is usually more marginal, lives a bit more extreme and a bit more unbalanced. And also such people with many planets in the sixth house are workaholics. So I'm sure that Whitney Houston was working really hard when she would get into a working mode. I can guarantee you with this full sixth house, she would be all there, she would not think about anything else. But unfortunately, it can go into unbalance with drugs as well, and addictions. It's very often you see that. And Venus also is love and relationships. And whenever it's in the sixth house, there can be this balance. Sixth house is the house of your enemies. And sugar, Venus is sugar, can be your enemy, which is alcohol, Venus is everything that brings you enjoyment and pleasure. Venus is the planet of pleasure. When it's in the sixth house, pleasures become your enemies because you do them to an extreme or in some unhealthy way. Venus is also relationships and love. So your partner becomes an enemy. So there is like these people with Venus in the sixth house have often a lot of their relationships are very turbulent, with a lot of arguments, much more than other people. And they only improve with age after 40 onwards. Unfortunately, Whitney could not live that far to have more balanced relationship. But in the first part of life, usually relationships are imbalanced or in some way quarrelsome, argumentative, because Venus, the planet of relationship, is in the house of enemies. Then seventh house is the house of relationship itself. Venus is the planet of relationship, but seventh house is the house of relationships. So they're different things. And we have there Mercury. So the partner that she met must have been Mercury is a planet of someone who is very clever, who is very good with words. So Bobby Brown, or whatever his name was, must have been quite clever, witty, also making her laugh a lot. Whenever you have Mercury in the seventh house, you can have a great laugh with your partner, great ability for him to make you laugh. And I'm sure he could do that. And that's one of the reasons that she was fascinated with him. And Mercury is very playful, childlike planet. But at the same time, she also has another two very difficult planets there. One is Pluto, the other one is Uranus. Here, I don't have them indicated in my chart because they're newer planets, but it's PL and Uranus, UR. And Pluto is the planet of manipulation and control. When it's in the seventh house of relationships, such people will have in there as a partner someone who is trying to control them, to manipulate them, a bit of a dark side, almost criminal side. Pluto is the criminal, is the manipulative, controlling person is the person who is almost like a handler. He could have been almost like a handler to her, trying to run her whole life, and a bit of a dictator. Pluto is a bit of a dictator, manipulative. And Uranus is someone who is a rebel, so also a rebel, someone who doesn't want to follow traditions and the relationship. Whenever Uranus in the 7th house, close to the 7th house, gives a lot of on and off with relationship. Uranus is a disruptive planet. It's one moment there, it's one not there. Very exciting and electrifying relationships that are full of excitement, but always unstable. And couple this with the Plutonic influence of control and obsession and trying to manipulate each other, then it gets a bit dark. But at least Mercury was brightening up things here a bit with his their ability to be friends at the same time, their ability to be to have fun together. Mercury is the planet of fun, games, and communication. He was probably quite witty. But Pluto and Uranus made the relationship extremely dark and disruptive. And Pluto is the planet also of addictions to some extent. So such partner was addictive. She was addicted towards him. He was like a drug to her, and he was the reason for her to go into addictions. So Pluto is quite a dark planet. And then we go to the 8th house, and 8th house rules death. And guess which planet we have there? Mars. Mars is the planet of sudden endings. People, 8th house, if you have planets there, it will be a very good indicator of what kind of ending you have in your life, what kind of death you'll have. And people with Mars in the 8th house, they usually tend to live very vigorously, but die a bit younger, unless there are some other influences aspecting which can prolong life. But usually this is like a sudden, unexpected death, and often there can be secrecy, something secretive involved there. So I'm not ruling out that in some way there was a conspiracy, or there was something. There's Illuminati, they're saying sacrifice of Whitney Houston or something. Well, I'm not sure if it's that extreme, but there could have been some foul play. And Mars is also the planet of accidents. So kind of accident happening that the person leaves this realm, this physical realm, the physical body very quickly. They don't hang on with some disease for months and months. It's very quickly, it's usually unexpectedly. Sometimes it can be heart attack, because Mars rules things connected to the heart and to the blood, and inner attack, inner attack of the body, or attack of secret enemies. So I'm not excluding that thing, some foul play as well there. I think that Kennedy also had Mars in the 8th house when he was shot, and accidents, shooting, sudden endings before their time happened this way. But at least the person never suffered, so we can be sure she never suffered. And the last planet that we see, I'm just going quickly through all the planets, is Saturn in the 12th house. And the difficult houses in astrology are the 6th, the 8th, and the 12th. If you see persons with more than 2 or 3 planets in those, just like Whitney has 4 planets, 2 in the 6th, 1 in the 8th, and 1 in the 12th, these are the really difficult planets in astrology, you'll see that you probably will be correct to presume that such person is a bit more conflicted. Such person has a little bit more inner disbalance of inner contradiction within themselves, and a bit more difficulties in their life than normal. And because this rules enemies, and this rules, the 6th house rules enemies, and anything which harms you. 8th house rules as well compulsions and addictions. They're all connected. Planets, if you have more planets in 6th, 8th, and 12th house, usually people are more prone to addictions normally. And she was putting a big fight with drugs and addictions, because Mars, the planet of fighting, is in her 8th house, which is the house of battle as well, when you're trying to battle your own inner demons. And when Mars is there, it's quite, a person can really, if they have a nice strong Mars, can overcome those addictions and demons. But unfortunately, there were too many other planets in the other difficult houses of addiction, again, of imbalances, all planets 12 and 6. So I'm sure that for periods of times she was overcoming this addiction and staying clean, but the other more disbalancing influences took over. So you saw how in 10-15 minutes, just by looking at the house positions of her planets, we could see the major themes in her life. And even if I haven't known it was Whitney Houston, if I had gone just one by one, I was going to tell the story of the life without knowing her real story, So you see how amazing astrology can be. You can write to me if you want to hear about other celebrities that you're interested in, and I can do their horoscopes as well. This way you can learn astrology with me.